Yo, it's your boy, the host with the most, back with another one. Kind of wanted to let this story breathe a little bit because a lot of people on both sides of the fence, particularly on how they view this situation, they either for or against Wack 100. And this just goes to show all media isn't good media. Okay, so basically, this took place over the weekend, over last weekend. Wack 100, TMZ, you know how they do. They basically just walk up to celebrities or influencers and put a microphone up in their face and they ask them a ridiculous random question. And the question that the TMZ reporter asked Wack 100 TMZ was, "Is Nipsey Hussle a legend?" Okay. Now, this wasn't something Wack 100 talked about or referred about, in his timeline. This is just something that wasn't even on social media. This wasn't even a question to ask on. It wasn't a question that people were asking. It was a hot button topic or question on social media, like on Twitter or wherever you view your social media from. Just a random question: is Nipsey Hussle a legend? All right. And Wack 100 responded like this. He basically said, define legend. He basically threw the question back at the reporter. Define the word legend. And he used an example of, let's just say hypothetically, Dr. Dre, who's an influencer in the hip hop culture, as far as a rapper, a producer, a mogul, also even outside of the music industry. He founded the Beat headphones. So, Dr. Dre, if you look at his body of work, it's enormous. So basically he said, what if Dr. Dre passed away? Would people view Dr. Dre as a legend? And the only way you can dictate whether or not Dr. Dre is a legend is his body of work. And basically he said Nipsey Hussle, when you look at his body of work, it's just not enough there to define him as a legend. And basically he went into how, when he was alive, he didn't have a platinum album. He didn't have the number one streaming album or even the top 10 or the top 100 most streamed album. He didn't have a hit single. If you look at his body of work when he was alive, you would come to the conclusion that Nipsey Hussle is not a legend. Now, since he passed, since he has done passed, of course his streams have gone up. People are now more than ever, or now more than ever, know who Nipsey Hussle is, and everyone is playing his album, playing his songs. He's getting a lot of, and this sort of happens this way. It always happens with musicians who pass away. If you look at Prince, Michael Jackson, if you look at Tupac, if you look at Biggie, Elvis Presley, Bing Crosby, if you look at their songs, they're always they're always in the top 100. Okay, even Whitney Houston, still to this day, if you look at those artists and if you check out their catalog, if you check out their albums, if you check out their music, it's always in the top 100 of most requested streaming songs or albums. Okay, particularly when there's a birthday or something, or a new project comes from one of these artists, something that they found in the studio vault that hasn't been released. Even Aaliyah is, still to this day, people are clamoring for Aaliyah's music to be introduced on all the streaming services, including Apple. One point, Apple had Aaliyah's music, and then they had to take it down. But people are, even to this day, clamoring for Aaliyah's music. Okay, so this happens with a lot of musicians who have passed away. it only increases their popularity, and it only increases the demand for that artist's music. Okay, so this is the common theme when you talk about Nipsey Hussle. This Nipsey Hussle fits this theme, and basically what Wack 100 was saying was, uh, if you look at his body of work, is he a legend? Now, I also feel like we're living in a time where I think people are oversensitive. I think we're also living in a time where people can't separate the person from their achievements. People can't separate the musician from their songs. I think everyone tries to, include everything, include the person, include their work, just include it all, and then make a judgment call on whether or not that person was good or not, whether or not that person contributes or not. And I feel like we're living in a time where we just can't separate the person from their music. We include everything. And I feel like you're either in one of these two sides of the fence, okay? That are, that are upset about what Wack 100 said. Either you're a blind fan who you're not even paying attention to what Wack 100 is saying. You're only paying attention to key words, and you're just a blind fan, and you feel like that's cruel, that's not necessary, that's being very negative towards Nipsey Hussle. Or you just really don't know hip hop music, the hip hop culture, and how we determine the stars from the superstars. Okay, the one hit wonders from from the huge the singers that are the musicians that continue to make good music. Okay, so I feel like, and I also feel like, if it came from somebody else that has some that was more credit, that had a lot of credit in the music industry, I feel like a lot of people would not respond the way they responded to Wack 100. Okay, I feel like if this was coming from somebody else, and this was like a closed set, and this was something like in an interview, like on television or made for the television or for the internet, I feel like a lot of people would I think the majority of people would agree with that person if, and they also say it in a safe, if the message was safe, and you can't perceive it as negativity or has some type of undertones to it, and if it wasn't coming from Wack 100, I feel like a lot of people would agree to disagree. But if you got facts, and if you can prove your statement, then I think a lot of people will say, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I wouldn't took that route, but I understand where you're coming from. So I feel like, due to the fact that it was Wack 100, due to the fact that it was on TMZ, due to the fact that this was not a staged interview where this took place on a podcast, or this took place on a television show, or on social media, wherever the case may be, I feel like if this was a random topic and people perceive it as being negative, being being hateful towards Nipsey Hussle and his family, I feel like if it wasn't under those settings, people would perceive it a little bit different. Okay, so to me, and this has even yesterday, this has even T.I. Issued a statement about what Wack 100 said about Nipsey Hussle, respecting the dead and things of that nature. And now Wack 100 and T.I. is getting into it. And I feel like this, which in the beginning, over the weekend, it was a validated question. Okay, it was a question that had a lot of substance to it, even though it was coming from Wack 100. Since then, from yesterday, now this has been blown out of proportion. Wack 100 attacked T.I., and several other artists are now talking about what about, is Nipsey Hussle a legend or not? And to me, a lot of people, the first thing they do is they gravitate to another musician and use them for an example. Yes, Wack 100 did it for Dr. Dre, but then they'll use, they'll say, well, why don't y'all keep that same energy about Tupac and Biggie? Because in their minds and in their eyes and in their opinions, they don't perceive them as legends. And I always made this when Tupac passed away and when Biggie passed away. I always made this known that I felt like, and it wasn't a competitive thing. I didn't take it as a competition thing. I just separated the artists, both artists, and I looked at the body of work that both of these guys had. And I was more favored to Tupac being a legend because there was a lot to Tupac than Machiavelli, than All Eyes on Me, than Death Row. Before he signed to Death Row, Tupac was already validated. He was already starring in movies. He was Above the Rim. That was a very great movie. And it kind of promoted the use of having rap artists in movies. Okay, even though there were a lot of rap artists that were doing movies before Above the Rim, I feel like it commercialized it, making it safe for Hollywood to incorporate, rap artists in, real documentaries, real movies, television shows. Okay, I think it spawned all of that, and also Tupac was he was on the hit television show called The Different World. A Different World was under the umbrella of The Cosby Show. Bill Cosby, and I'm not talking about the Bill Cosby of now, but back in the day, Bill Cosby, when you're under that umbrella, he likes to produce clean type quality family shows, okay, with not a lot of controversy. They may sprinkle in a couple of shows that have hot button topics, okay, but he wanted shows where everyone in the family could enjoy them. And Tupac was in an episode of a different world due to his relationship, his kinship, his friendship with Jada Pinkett Smith, as well as Jasmine Guy, as well as he had connections with other actors and actresses on that show, and he was also on that show. So and he was also on episode of Martin. But I felt like, and if you look at his body of work as far as a musician go, he had other albums that to me define Tupac more than All Eyes on Me and Machiavelli. Me Against the World, Strictly for My NI, the rest. Brenda Had a Baby, had hit singles like Brenda Had a Baby, I Get Around. He had, he was also very influential. He was also influenced into the pop culture as well. So when you look at Tupac and you look at his body of work, there's a lot on there. There's a lot of work on that body. Excuse me, pardon the tongue. Excuse me, but there's a lot in there that you can say without a shadow of a doubt, Tupac is a legend. Okay? Now, when it comes to Biggie, to me, I felt like there was not a lot there to say 110%, apologize for the noise in the background, 110% that he's a legend. I didn't say he wasn't. I never uttered the phrase that Notorious B.I.G. wasn't a legend. I kind of, if I kind of agreed to disagree, and in my opinion, I just went on and just said, look, if the majority of people who love Notorious B.I.G.'s music, and I love Notorious B.I.G. music, but I felt like it just wasn't a lot there. Now, Notorious B.I.G. had other things going on in his resume as far, he wasn't just a rapper. He used to write songs for Diddy, also write songs for Lil' Kim, Junior Mafia, okay? So, there was a lot of there was some substance there, but if someone would came up to me and say, I understand why y'all think Tupac could be a legend But to me, it's just not enough. If someone would have came up to me and said there's not enough there to validate that Biggie is a legend, you have, I could understand why they reached that conclusion. Okay, but Biggie, even though his body of work is much smaller than Tupac, he just did not. It's due to his death. Rest in peace to him. Rest in peace to Notorious B.I.G. I felt like if he had a little bit more time, without a shadow of a doubt, it'll crystallize even more that Notorious B.I.G. was a legend. But I understood if people thought that if he wasn't a legend, because it was not a lot of substance there to his body of work. But back to Wack 100, I understand where he was coming from with Nipsey Hussle. Even though people might perceive it as being harsh, being very critical, being very negative, sometimes the truth is that, okay? I felt like if he would have phrased it a little bit better, if it was something that was mentioned to him like in a podcast or on a television show, it was a actual real interview instead of somebody sticking a mic up in your face like at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning and asking you a question, is Nipsey Hussle a legend? I felt like if he had time to really think about it, Wack 100 would probably he would have the same opinion, but it would digest a little bit better with a lot of people that are in the hip hop culture. I feel like this has spiraled out of control. People think it's disrespectful, it's distasteful. What spawned him into saying something like that? And I just explained. The TMZ reporter asked it, okay, and he just wanted a controversial subject to be sprouting on social media, in my opinion. This was not something that the TMZ reporter wanted closure with or wanted information on. This was not a hot button topic on social media. This was not trending. It was just something that the TMZ reporter just he just stuck a mic in Wack 100's face, and Wack 100 just went, straight off the rip. I felt like if this was in another situation, I feel like people would perceive it a little bit better. I feel like if someone else was asked this, I felt like it would be perceived a little bit different. But it just goes to show you we're living in a world where people are. I feel like, and I don't want to say we're ultra sensitive, but I do feel like we're living in a world where people can't separate the person from their craft. Okay, you can have an opinion on someone's craft as long as you're not being very negative and being very harshful or hateful towards the individual, but particularly if the individual is no longer here to defend themselves. I understand where people are on that perspective. However, if you look at the question for what it is, and if you can separate the two, I feel like Nipsey Hussle, in my opinion, Nipsey Hussle is not a legend. I feel like I think we should appreciate the projects that he put in. I think we should appreciate the music that he made. I think we should be admired and look up to the things that he was doing on and off the stage, on and out of the studio. He was a business mogul. He was starting to become a business mogul, taking care of his community, taking care of his family. He was a better man than a lot of rappers or entertainers. Still to this day, I feel like he's a better man and a better entertainer than a lot of rappers or athletes or people that are influencers on social media. I feel like Nipsey Hussle is the pure definition of that, and I feel like that's something that we all should embody. Even though a lot of people, think that the game is taking it way over admiring Nipsey Hussle by, doing a lot of things that Nipsey Hussle was doing. I feel like everyone should be doing that, in my opinion. It's not a wrong thing to do. It's not wrong to be a better person, a better man, a better father, to take care of your community, to take care of your family, to strive for your goals. Make sure your goals incorporate everyone that's around you. Uplift everyone else around you. I don't understand why people are so critical of the game doing that. I can understand why people think, well, he's growing his hair out, having braids like Nipsey Hussle, having a beard like Nipsey Hussle, having a record label, prolific. Nipsey Hussle used to say that constantly. Had everything Nipsey Hussle about him. I understand why people would perceive that as, maybe that's a little bit too much, but I can't hate on someone that's doing that, because truthfully, we all should be doing that. We all should be aspiring to do that. Okay, so that's my 2 cents on what Wack 100 said, that TMZ interview, and we can. I feel like we can judge people. I mean, judge their work, not so judge people. I feel like we could, without being harsh, without being over dramatic, without being too critical. No matter if the person is still alive or dead, you can still separate their work from themselves. Never in that interview, Wack 100 talked about Nipsey Hussle the person. Okay, and if this question was, what you think of Nipsey Hussle as a person, then Wack 100 would have kept it all the way 100 and told you guys when I'm telling you about Nipsey Hussle. I feel like Nipsey Hussle was a great human being. I mean, we just don't have a lot of them still walking on this earth today. We have a few, but we don't have a lot of them. And to me, I think Nipsey Hussle as a person, uplifted a lot of people by the things he was doing in and out of the studio. So, guys, tell me what you think. Rate, comment, subscribe. It's your boy. I'm Chris the Dom One, and I am out of here. Deuces, guys. Deuces.